Tell me she means nothing, David. Lisa whispered to the empty air, her fingernails biting so deeply into her palms that they drew blood. The heavy oak door to the Alpha's private sanctum stood a fraction of an inch ajar, spilling a harsh line of golden light into the shadowed corridor. Inside, David, the terrifying, seemingly immovable Alpha King of the Western Reaches, was entirely focused on the fragile, dark-haired woman weeping against his chest. His massive hand stroked her hair, a gesture of absolute, uncharacteristic tenderness that Lisa had not seen in 3 years of mating. "I can't lose you again." David's voice rumbled, thick with a desperate emotion that tore the air apart. Lisa stepped back into the shadows, the mate bond in her chest snapping violently. Her king wasn't just having an affair. He was in love. The silence of the packhouse corridor was deafening. Lisa backed away from the sliver of light, her velvet slippers making no sound against the imported Italian marble. Every instinct in her lupine blood screamed at her to kick the door off its hinges, to bare her fangs and tear the interloper to pieces. That was the law of their kind. A Luna challenged, a Luna destroyed. But Lisa had not survived the ruthless politics of the Alpha King's court by acting on feral impulse. She turned and walked away, her spine impossibly straight, though her vision blurred with a sickening cocktail of grief and rage. The air around her felt thin, starved of oxygen. The mate bond, a metaphysical tether that connected her soul to David's, pulsed with a dull, agonizing ache. For months, she had felt a distance growing between them. A subtle shift in his scent, late nights at the holding company he used as a front for pack business, and a coldness in his amber eyes. She had blamed the border disputes in the north. She had blamed the stress of the crown. She reached their master suite at the end of the hall. The room was vast, decorated in tones of slate and deep forest green, smelling overwhelmingly of David, pine needles, petrichor, and power. It made her stomach turn. Lisa walked past their massive 4-poster bed and stepped into her private dressing room, closing the door softly behind her before she finally allowed her knees to buckle. She collapsed onto the plush rug, pressing a hand over her mouth to stifle the sob clawing at her throat. "I can't lose you again." The words echoed in her skull, a cruel loop of devastation. Who was she? The woman hadn't smelled like a wolf. There was no sharp tang of a predator, only the soft, floral scent of rain and lilacs. A human, or a rogue without a pack scent. Lisa pulled her knees to her chest, her mind racing back to the day David claimed her. They had stood before the High Council, 2 leaders uniting fractured territories. It had begun as a strategic alliance, but the goddess had intervened, sparking a true mate bond. David had sworn on the moon itself that he would protect her, honor her, and place no one above her. Yet, there he was, holding another woman like she was made of spun glass. Slowly, the initial shock began to crystallize into a terrifying, icy resolve. Lisa pushed herself up from the floor, walking over to the full-length mirror. Her reflection stared back, striking silver blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and high, aristocratic cheekbones. She was the Luna Queen. She commanded armies of enforcers and sat on the boards of 3 Fortune 500 companies. She would not be discarded like a common mistress. She needed to know everything before she struck. She needed to know who this woman was, how long David had been hiding her, and exactly how deep this betrayal ran. Lisa smoothed the wrinkles from her silk robe, her blue eyes hardening into chips of ice. If David wanted to play games in the dark, he was about to learn that his queen owned the shadows.
The next morning, the dining room of the royal estate was bathed in pale, gray sunlight. Lisa sat at the long mahogany table, a cup of Earl Grey tea cooling between her hands. She wore a tailored ivory pantsuit, her hair pinned back immaculately.
Every inch the untouchable royal. The double doors swung open, and David strode in. He was breathtaking, a fact that only twisted the knife deeper. Standing 6'4", his broad shoulders filled out his charcoal bespoke suit perfectly. His dark hair was neatly styled, but it was his eyes, a glowing, predatory amber that usually commanded absolute submission from anyone in the room. "Good morning, my Luna," David murmured, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in her chest. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her temple. Lisa didn't flinch. She inhaled slowly. Beneath his expensive cologne and the scent of expensive leather, she caught the faintest ghostly trace of lilacs. It took every ounce of her willpower to keep her heart rate steady. "Morning, David," she replied smoothly, taking a sip of her tea. "You were up late." David took the seat at the head of the table, shaking out his linen napkin. He didn't look at her, focusing instead on the tablet beside his plate. "The northern packs are pushing the boundary lines again. I had to consult with the generals." A lie. A smooth, practiced, flawless lie. "I see," Lisa said, her tone mildly interested. "Is there anything I need to handle diplomatically?" "No," David said quickly, perhaps a fraction too quickly. He finally looked up, his amber eyes locking onto hers. A flicker of something, guilt, apprehension, passed through his gaze before the mask slid back into place. "I have it under control. You should focus on the charity gala this weekend." Dismissed. He was actively sidelining her. Once David left for his public office in the city, Lisa moved into action. She summoned Marcus, the head of estate security, and a beta whose loyalty to the Luna was absolute. Marcus stood at attention in her private study, a rugged man with scars mapping his jawline. "Marcus," Lisa said, turning off the security cameras in her office with a remote. "I need a localized access report for the East Wing over the last month." Marcus frowned, his brow furrowing. "The East Wing, my Luna? That sector has been closed for renovations by the King's direct order. Only his personal guard, Elias, has access." "I am aware of the King's orders," Lisa said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, silken whisper. "I am asking for the logs, Marcus." The beta swallowed hard, recognizing the authority of his Luna. He pulled a heavy tablet from his tactical vest, tapped rapidly for a few moments, and handed it over. "Elias goes in 3 times a day. Meals mostly, and there's a localized medical team that visited twice last week under heavy non-disclosure agreements." Lisa's eyes scanned the data. A medical team. Meals. She was being kept like a prisoner or a heavily guarded treasure. "Thank you, Marcus. Speak of this to no one, not even the king." "My life is yours, Luna." Marcus bowed, stepping backward out of the room. Lisa sat alone, staring at the flashing data on the screen. The East Wing. It was an isolated fortress within the estate. Instinctively, her hand went to her collarbone, tracing a faint, jagged scar that dipped beneath her blouse. It was a nervous habit, born from a lifetime of pushing down fragments of a past she couldn't fully remember. A crackling fire, a screaming child, a hand slipping from hers in the dark. She shook her head, clearing the phantom smoke from her mind. Today was not for ghosts. Today was for the living, and the liar who claimed to love her. The security bypass codes were complex, but Lisa had spent years mastering the intricate systems of the royal estate. By 2 in the afternoon, while the guard shift rotated, she slipped through the heavy, reinforced doors of the East Wing. The air here was different, The heavy, oppressive grandeur of the main house was replaced by soft lighting and plush, neutralizing decor. It felt like a high-end clinical sanctuary. As she moved silently down the carpeted hall, the scent of rain and lilacs grew stronger, hitting her senses in suffocating waves. She paused outside the master's suite. She could hear the soft hum of a television inside, playing a nature documentary. Lisa rested her hand against the biometric scanner. Using a master override chip she had procured months ago for emergencies, the lock clicked green. The door hissed open. Lisa stepped inside, her presence masking itself naturally, a predator in the tall grass. The room was bright, filled with fresh flowers. Standing by the large bay window, looking out over the private gardens, was the woman. She was wearing one of David's oversized cashmere sweaters. The sight of it made Lisa's blood boil. "Elias?" the woman asked, her voice soft, musical, and tinged with anxiety. She turned around. Lisa stepped fully into the light. The woman froze. Up close, she was striking, though fragile. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her eyes were wide, taking in Lisa's imposing stance, the bespoke clothing, the unmistakable aura of power. "You aren't Elias," the woman breathed, taking a step back, her hands instinctively coming up to protect her chest. "No," Lisa said, her voice dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. "I am Lisa, the Luna of this pack, and you are the woman sleeping with my husband." The woman's face drained of all color. She shook her head rapidly, backing up until her shoulders hit the glass of the window. No, it's not what you think. Please, I don't. David said it wasn't safe for anyone to know I was here." "I'm sure he did," Lisa sneered, stepping closer. She wanted to terrify her. She wanted to break her. How long? How long has the king been keeping a stray human in his private wing? "I'm not his mistress," the woman cried out, her voice cracking with genuine panic. "Don't lie to me." Lisa snapped, her wolf pushing to the surface, her blue eyes flashing silver for a fraction of a second. The woman flinched violently, raising her hands higher as if to ward off a blow. As she did, the oversized collar of the sweater slipped, revealing a silver chain around her neck. From the chain dangled a pendant. A heavy, tarnished silver half-moon, its edges jagged where it had been violently snapped in two. Lisa stopped dead. The air in her lungs vanished. The ferocious anger that had been driving her forward evaporated, replaced by a sudden, violent vertigo. The room seemed to tilt. Her hand flew to her own chest, slipping beneath her silk blouse to grip the matching silver sun that rested against her heart. "Where?" Lisa choked out, her voice entirely stripped of its royal command, sounding suddenly like a terrified little girl. "Where did you get that?" The woman stared at her, tears spilling over her dark lashes, her chest heaving. She reached up with a trembling hand, her fingers wrapping around the half-moon. "My sister," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She gave it to me. The night the orphanage burned down. Before we were separated." Lisa stared at the woman's face. The bone structure, the shape of her eyes, beneath the exhaustion and the fear, the resemblance was undeniable. The ghost from the flames was standing right in front of her. "Maya," Lisa breathed, the name falling from her lips for the first time in 20 years. The silence in the room stretched until it felt brittle enough to snap. Maya stared at the silver sun pendant resting against Lisa's silk blouse, her dark eyes wide with an impossible, fragile hope. "Lisa?" Maya's voice was a ragged whisper. Her knees buckled. Before Lisa could even think, instinct took over. The Luna, the hardened corporate strategist, vanished. She surged forward, catching Maya before she hit the floor. The moment their hands connected, a jolt, not the fiery, possessing spark of a mate bond, but a deep, resonant thrum of blood, passed between them. Lisa held her, pulling her against her chest. The floral scent of rain and lilacs was suddenly familiar, an olfactory ghost from a forgotten childhood bed. Tears, hot and unbidden, spilled over Lisa's cheeks, ruining her impeccable makeup. "I thought you died," Lisa choked out, burying her face in Maya's dark hair. "I saw the roof collapse. I felt your hand slip." Maya sobbed, clutching the fabric of Lisa's blazer like a lifeline. "I was pulled out the back. A human family took me in. They moved away the next morning. I tried to find you, Lisa. For years I looked, but you were gone." They knelt on the plush carpet of the East Wing, two women mourning the decades stolen from them. For 10 minutes, there were no alphas, no crowns, no betrayals. There was only the overwhelming, suffocating weight of reunion. But reality is a cruel master, and it does not wait. The heavy thud of boots echoing in the corridor snapped Lisa back to the present. The door hissed open again, and David stood in the threshold, flanked by 2 enforcers. He took in the scene, his mate kneeling on the floor, holding the woman he had kept hidden, and the color drained from his face. "Lisa," David said, his voice dropping into the low, commanding octave that usually demanded instant obedience. "Step away from her." The grief inside Lisa instantly transmuted into white-hot fury. She didn't let go of Maya. Instead, she stood, pulling her sister up with her and pushing Maya slightly behind her, shielding her with her own body. "How long?" Lisa asked, her voice dangerously calm. The blue of her eyes bled into the glowing silver of an enraged wolf. David signaled the enforcers to leave, shutting the door behind them. He took a step forward, his hands raised placatingly. "Luna, please. You don't understand the situation." "I understand perfectly." Lisa spat, her canines elongating slightly, pressing against her bottom lip. "You found my sister, my human sister, and instead of bringing her to me, you hid her in an isolated wing of my own home and draped her in your clothes. Explain it to me, David, before I forget the vows I made and tear your throat out." David looked at Maya, his expression softening with that same unbearable tenderness Lisa had witnessed the night before. Then he looked at Lisa, his amber eyes filled with genuine anguish. "I didn't know she was your sister," David said softly. "I only knew she was my second chance mate." The words hit Lisa with the force of a physical blow. The air rushed from her lungs, and she stumbled backward a half step. A second chance mate. A fated bond bestowed by the goddess only when the first bond was deemed inadequate, or when the soul required a different anchor. It was incredibly rare, and incredibly destructive to the existing Luna. "No," Maya whispered behind her, shaking her head. "No. He told me he was protecting me from the northern packs. He said they were hunting me because I possessed a rare bloodline." "They were," David said quickly, stepping closer. "That much is true. When I found you in the borders town, the northern trackers were closing in. Your scent, it called to me, Maya. I realized what you were to me immediately. But I couldn't bring you into the main house. The politics, the council, they would have demanded I reject Lisa." "So you decided to play both sides?" Lisa demanded, her voice cracking. The pain in her chest was agonizing. a literal tearing of the metaphysical tether that bound her to David. He hadn't just cheated. The universe itself had declared her insufficient for him. You let me believe our bond was failing because of stress, while you played house in the East Wing with my long-lost sister? I was trying to find a way, David roared, his control finally snapping. The sheer power in his voice rattled the windows. I love you, Lisa. We built this kingdom together. I couldn't just discard you. But the bond to her, it's absolute. It's feral. I was losing my mind trying to keep her safe and keep our pack stable. Lisa looked at the man she had loved for years. He looked exhausted, cornered, and deeply flawed. The Alpha King, reduced to a desperate male torn between duty, history, and a primal calling he couldn't fight. She turned to look at Maya. Her sister was trembling, staring at David with a mixture of betrayal and undeniable, terrified longing. The mate bond was a two-way street. Maya felt it too, even if she didn't fully understand it. Lisa closed her eyes. The situation was impossible. If she challenged David, the pack would fracture, leading to a civil war that would destroy the kingdom they had built. If she stayed, she would have to watch her mate be consumed by his bond to her own sister. I need time, Lisa whispered, the fight draining out of her. Lisa, please, David started. Do not speak to me, she commanded, the royal authority snapping back into place. She opened her eyes, fixing him with a glacial stare. You will not approach me. You will not approach her. You will remain in the West Wing until I decide what is to be done with you. She grabbed Maya's hand. Come with me. David watched them go, his broad shoulders slumping, the heavy crown finally crushing him under its weight. The Luna's private chambers were a fortress within a fortress. Lisa locked the heavy mahogany doors and activated the privacy wards, ensuring not even a werewolf's enhanced hearing could penetrate the room. She guided Maya to the velvet settee near the fireplace and poured them both a generous glass of aged amber liquid from a crystal decanter. Drink, Lisa ordered softly. Maya took the glass with trembling hands, taking a sip and coughing as the alcohol burned its way down her throat. Lisa, I didn't know. I swear to you. I didn't know he was your husband. I didn't even know werewolves were real until a month ago. Lisa sighed, sinking into the armchair opposite her sister. The anger was fading, leaving behind a cold, desolate clarity. I know, Maya. You're human. The bond doesn't present itself the same way for you. You just feel an intense, undeniable pull toward him, an obsession, and you were frightened, running from hunters. Hunters? Maya asked, confused. He said northern packs. Same thing, essentially. Lisa explained, rubbing her temples. The northern packs believe that certain human bloodlines carry dormant traits. They hunt them to breed or to experiment. David wasn't lying when he said he saved your life. But he lied about everything else, Maya said, her voice hardening slightly. She set the glass down. He kept me in a cage, a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. And he betrayed you. Lisa looked at her sister, really looked at her. Beneath the fragility, there was a spark of the same steel that had allowed Lisa to survive the Alpha Courts. They were two halves of the same coin, forged in the same fire. Yes, he did, Lisa agreed, her voice flat. But the mate bond is a force of nature, Maya. It rewrites your neurochemistry. It makes you do insane, desperate things to protect the bond. It doesn't excuse his cowardice in hiding it. But I understand the madness that drove him. Do you love him? Maya asked quietly. Lisa looked down at her hands. The rings on her fingers felt heavy. I love the man I built this kingdom with. I love the partner who stood beside me through 2 wars. But the man who lied to me for a month? The man who let me doubt my own sanity as our bond frayed? I don't know him anymore. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unresolved grief and impossible choices. What do we do now? Maya asked. Lisa stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the sprawling estate. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the manicured lawns. The council will find out, Lisa said analytically, her mind slipping into the familiar grooves of strategy. David has been acting erratically. His scent is changing, flooded with the pheromones of a new bond. The elders are perceptive. When they discover he has a second chance mate, they will demand he depose me and claim you. A second chance bond is considered a divine mandate. Maya gasped, standing up. I won't do it. I won't take your place. You might not have a choice, Lisa warned, turning back to her. If you reject him, the bond will slowly drive him insane. An alpha driven mad by a rejected bond is a danger to the entire territory. He would have to be put down. Maya covered her mouth, horror dawning in her eyes. So it's either I betray my sister, or I kill the man I'm bonded to? There is a third option, Lisa said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She walked back to her desk and pulled out a heavy, leather-bound book from a locked drawer. The ancient laws. The ones written before the councils sanitized our history to make us palatable to the modern world. She opened the book, the parchment pages crackling. A Luna cannot be deposed if she is undefeated in combat. And an alpha cannot be forced to take a new mate if his current Luna holds the territory's power of attorney. Lisa looked up, her blue eyes flashing with cold, calculated resolve. I sit on the boards of all his front companies. I control the financial flow of the western reaches. Without me, his kingdom bankrupts in a week. You're going to hold the pack hostage? Maya asked, stunned. No, Lisa said, snapping the book shut. I'm going to negotiate terms. David wants to keep his crown, his pack, and his new mate. The council wants obedience to the goddess's will. I want my dignity, and I want my sister safe. She walked over and took Maya's hands. We survive this, Maya. But we do it on my terms. We do not let a man, even an alpha king, dictate our worth. 3 days later, the atmosphere in the great hall was thick with tension. The High Council, composed of the oldest and most traditional alphas and lunas of the territory, sat in a semicircle at the head of the room. David stood before them, looking haggard but resolute. He wore his formal regalia, the heavy silver chain of the Alpha King resting against his broad chest. The secret was out. The murmurs of a second chance mate had reached the elders, and they had convened an emergency tribunal. Lisa sat to the side, occupying a heavy wooden chair reserved for the Luna. She was dressed in severe black, her expression unreadable. She had not spoken to David since the confrontation in the East Wing. Maya sat beside her, looking small but determined in a simple gray dress. The council members kept shooting her assessing, slightly predatory glances. Alpha David. Elder Thorne, a grizzled man with a scarred face, began, his voice booming through the hall. The rumors have been confirmed by your own physician. You have found a second chance mate. David nodded stiffly. I have, Elder. The law is clear, Thorne continued, his eyes darting to Lisa. A second chance bond supersedes a chosen or initial bond. It is the will of the goddess to ensure the strongest lineage. You must sever your bond with Luna Lisa and elevate your true mate. A murmur of agreement rippled through the council. David clenched his jaw, I will not discard my Luna. Lisa has bled for this pack. She has governed with wisdom and strength. I will take Maya as a concubine, recognized under the old rites, but Lisa remains queen. Thorn scoffed. A human concubine, while the Luna remains barren. The pack needs heirs, David. You are playing a dangerous game, trying to appease your heart and your duty. Lisa stood up. The scraping of her chair against the stone floor echoed like a gunshot, instantly silencing the room. I believe, Lisa said, her voice clear and carrying perfectly, that the council is forgetting a crucial detail. Thorn scowled. And what is that, Luna? Lisa walked slowly to the center of the room, standing beside David, but not looking at him. She turned to face the elders. By pack law, a Luna can only be deposed if she fails her duties or is challenged and defeated, Lisa stated, quoting the statutes flawlessly. I have failed no duty. The treasury is overflowing, our borders are secure, and our alliances are strong. As for a challenge... She paused, letting the silence hang. Does anyone here wish to challenge me for the title? No one moved. Lisa was known as a ruthless tactician and a formidable fighter in her wolf form. Furthermore, Lisa continued, reaching into her blazer and pulling out a thick sheaf of legal documents. She tossed them onto the table in front of Elder Thorn. As per the corporate structuring of the Western Reaches Holdings, I hold a controlling 51% stake in the pack's financial assets. The land we stand on, the companies that fund our security, the investments that keep our people fed, they are legally mine. The elders stared at the documents, the color draining from their faces. David looked at Lisa, shock and a sudden, deep respect flashing in his eyes. He hadn't realized how thoroughly she had consolidated her power over the years. If you attempt to force David to sever our bond and strip me of my title, Lisa said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm, I will liquidate the assets. I will bankrupt the Western Reaches by morning. You will be kings of a ruined, penniless territory, vulnerable to the northern packs. The hall erupted in chaos. Elders shouted, pounding their fists on the table. David stepped forward, roaring for silence, his alpha aura pressing down on the room until everyone choked on the pressure. When quiet returned, Thorn glared at Lisa. This is treason, Luna. This is leverage, Lisa corrected coldly. I am proposing a compromise. She gestured for Maya to step forward. Maya walked hesitantly to Lisa's side. Maya is not just a human, Lisa announced, her voice ringing out. She is Maya Vance, my biological sister. The shock that hit the room was palpable. David stared at Maya, then at Lisa, the final pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The northern packs weren't just hunting a human with rare traits, Lisa continued. They were hunting the lost daughter of the Vance bloodline, a bloodline that carries the dormant gene of the white wolf. It was a gamble, a massive, dangerous lie born of desperation. The white wolf was a myth, a legend of a wolf with immense spiritual power that only appeared once a century. Lisa had no idea if Maya carried the gene, but she knew the council's obsession with prophecy and power. The elders stared at Maya with renewed awe and hunger. If David severs our bond, Lisa said, driving the final nail into the coffin, I will leave, and I will take my sister with me. You will lose your Luna, your fortune, and the potential of the white wolf. Thorn swallowed hard, his eyes darting between the documents and Maya. What are your terms, Luna? Lisa smiled, a sharp, feral expression that didn't reach her eyes. My terms are simple. We restructure the monarchy. The silence in the great hall was absolute, thick as coagulated blood. The elders stared at Lisa, their ancient, rigid paradigms short-circuiting against the sheer, undeniable reality of her leverage. A constitutional monarchy. Lisa echoed her own demand, her voice steady and ringing off the stone walls. The Alpha King will no longer hold absolute, unilateral authority over the western reaches. All military and financial decrees will require the dual signature of the Luna Queen. Furthermore, Maya Vance falls strictly under my royal protection. She is immune to any Alpha command, and she is barred from the East Wing. Elder Thorne's face modeled a furious, bruised purple. You would strip the king of his divine right? I would save his kingdom from his earthly mistakes. Lisa shot back, her gaze never wavering. She finally turned to look at David. He stood rigid, the heavy silver chain of his office suddenly looking more like a leash. The feral, chaotic energy of the second chance bond was still swirling in his amber eyes, a physical torment that made the muscles in his jaw twitch. But beneath the madness, beneath the goddess-imposed compulsion, there was a desperate, drowning plea for help. I accept her terms, David rasped, his voice tearing like old canvas. He stepped forward, putting himself between Lisa and the council. The Luna speaks with my voice. Let it be written into the pact charter. The absolute monarchy is dissolved. The council erupted again, but David's aura flared, a suffocating, dominant pressure that forced two of the weaker elders to their knees. It is done, he roared. The immediate aftermath was a tense, fragile peace. Lisa relocated Maya to the secure, opulent suites of the South Wing, directly adjacent to her own. For the first time in weeks, Maya was allowed to walk the grounds, flanked by Marcus and a contingent of the Luna's personal guard. That evening, the two sisters sat on a wide balcony overlooking the sprawling pine forests that bordered the estate. A tray of half-eaten pastries and untouched tea sat between them. The moonlight washed over them, highlighting the mirrored angles of their faces. It feels wrong, Maya whispered, pulling a cashmere shawl tighter around her shoulders. You gave up half your life for this place. For him. And now I'm the wedge driving it all apart. Lisa reached across the small table, covering Maya's trembling hand with her own steady one. You are not a wedge, Maya. You are a mirror. You just showed me the cracks that were already there. She exhaled a long, tired breath. The mate bond. We are taught from birth that it is flawless, that the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. But if it strips us of our free will, if it makes a good man lie and a sane woman doubt herself, then the system is flawed. Not you. Can you forgive him? Maya asked, her dark eyes searching Lisa's face. I don't know, Lisa admitted softly. It was the most vulnerable she had allowed herself to be in years. The love didn't vanish, but the trust was burned to ash. And I don't know if anything can grow in that soil again. Before Maya could respond, the wail of a siren tore through the serene night air. It wasn't the standard security alarm. It was a deep, guttural klaxon that vibrated in the teeth. The war horn. The balcony doors burst open. Marcus stood there, his usually stoic face tight with adrenaline, a heavy tactical rifle already slung across his chest. Luna, Marcus barked, dropping all formalities. The perimeter is breached. It's the northern packs. Alpha Fenrir has crossed the border with 200 wolves. Lisa stood up, her blood icing over. 200? How did they mobilize without our scouts noticing? They didn't come for territory, my queen, Marcus said grimly, his eyes shifting to Maya. They heard the rumors from the council chambers. They came for the White Wolf, and they are slaughtering anyone in their path. The royal estate transformed from a sanctuary into a war zone in a matter of minutes. The heavy iron gates were already buckling under the combined kinetic force of dozens of massive, feral wolves throwing themselves against the metal. Lisa didn't hesitate. She threw off her blazer and kicked off her heels, the civilized veneer of the corporate Luna burning away in an instant. Her bones cracked and realigned in a fluid, agonizingly beautiful symphony of violence. Within seconds, a massive silver-blonde wolf stood on the marble balcony. Her eyes, glowing an ethereal, icy blue, locked onto Maya. "Stay behind, Marcus." Lisa's voice echoed in Maya's mind, the telepathic link of the pack extending to her blood sister. "Do not let them see you." Lisa leapt from the second-story balcony, hitting the manicured lawn with earth-shattering force. She sprinted toward the front gates just as they gave way, with a deafening screech of rending metal. A flood of dark, heavily scarred northern wolves poured into the courtyard. From the left flank, a terrifying roar shook the ground. David. He had shifted into his monstrous, pitch-black form, easily the size of a small draft horse. He hit the front lines like a freight train, his jaws snapping the neck of the first northern wolf he collided with. The battle was absolute chaos. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of blood, the smell of ozone, and the wet sound of tearing flesh. Lisa fought with lethal, calculated precision. She didn't rely on brute strength. She used her speed, darting in to sever tendons and crush windpipes before spinning away. But there were too many. Through the blur of violence, Lisa saw him. Alpha Fenrir. He was a colossal, gray-furred beast covered in the scars of 100 battles. And he wasn't fighting the enforcers. He was sprinting past the front lines, his golden eyes locked dead on the south wing balcony, where Maya stood frozen in terror. The mate bond, the feral second-chance compulsion, screamed inside David's mind. Lisa could feel the psychic shockwave of it. The magic demanded David protect his new mate. It pulled at him, physically turning his massive black form toward the balcony. But Lisa was closer. She intercepted Fenrir halfway across the courtyard. The impact sounded like a car crash. Fenrir was heavier, older, and brutal. He threw Lisa off, his claws raking deep across her flank. Pain exploded in Lisa's side, but she scrambled to her paws, putting herself squarely between the Northern King and her sister. Fenrir lunged again, his jaws snapping for Lisa's throat. She braced for the impact, knowing she couldn't overpower him in a direct hold. Suddenly, a shadow eclipsed the moonlight. David didn't run to the balcony. He didn't run to Maya, fighting against the suffocating, divine mandate of the goddess herself. David threw his entire weight in front of Lisa. Fenrir's jaws clamped down, not on Lisa's throat, but on David's shoulder and neck. The crunch of bone was sickening. David let out a gargled roar of agony, but he didn't yield. He twisted, using his remaining strength to throw Fenrir into the stone fountain, cracking the granite. David collapsed, blood pooling instantly beneath his massive black chest. Lisa shifted back to human form, ignoring her own bleeding wounds, and dropped to her knees beside him. "David, no, look at me." On the balcony, something snapped. Maya watched the man who saved her, and the sister who protected her, bleeding out on the grass. The terror vanished, replaced by a deep, ancient well of heat rising in her chest. She didn't shift into a wolf. The legend was misunderstood. Maya raised her hands, and the dormant Vance bloodline ignited. A blinding, localized shockwave of pure kinetic white light erupted from her body. It swept across the courtyard, carrying no heat, but immense physical force. It slammed into the northern wolves, throwing them backward, disorienting them, blinding them with the sheer spiritual pressure of a predator apex they had never encountered. Fenrir, half drowned and terrified by the blinding light, scrambled to his feet and howled a retreat. But Lisa wasn't watching them run. She was pressing her hands against David's torn neck, weeping as the Alpha King's amber eyes began to dim. The estate infirmary smelled of antiseptic and lingering copper. 2 days had passed since the siege. David lay in the center of the intensive care suite, hooked to a dozen monitors. The physical wounds were severe, but werewolf healing was miraculous. It was the spiritual wound that had everyone terrified. Lisa sat beside his bed, holding his hand. She hadn't slept. She had governed the pack, finalized the treaty terms that officially banished Fenrir from the continent, and sat vigil, all while ignoring her own stitches. The door clicked open, and Maya walked in. She looked exhausted, the manifestation of her power having drained her entirely, leaving her human and fragile once more. "How is he?" Maya asked quietly. "Healing?" Lisa replied, her voice hoarse. "But he hasn't woken up." Maya stepped closer to the bed. She looked at David, then down at her own hands. "When I released that energy, I felt something else break. Inside me. That pull, that obsession I felt for him. It's gone, Lisa. Completely." Lisa looked up, her breath hitching. "The bond?" "I think the magic was a survival mechanism," Maya whispered. "A biological failsafe triggered by my dormant genes because I was in danger, and he was the strongest alpha nearby. But when I accessed my own power to save you both, I didn't need the failsafe anymore. It shattered." As if hearing her words, David's hand twitched within Lisa's grip. A low groan rumbled in his chest, and his heavy eyelids fluttered open. The amber glow in his eyes was muted, returning to the warm, deep brown of the man Lisa had married. He blinked against the harsh lighting, his gaze sluggishly finding Maya first. He stared at her for a long moment. There was recognition, fondness, and gratitude. But the feral, desperate hunger was entirely absent. He closed his eyes, letting out a long, shuddering breath of relief. Then he turned his head to Lisa. Tears immediately welled in his eyes. He weakly turned his hand over, intertwining his fingers with hers. "I chose you," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "The magic, it was screaming at me to go to her. But my soul was screaming for you." A tear slipped down Lisa's cheek, splashing onto their joined hands. "You idiot," she choked out, pressing her forehead against his knuckles. "You almost died." "I would die 1,000 times," David said, his grip tightening with a sudden, fierce strength. "Before I let anything take you from me, not the council, not the North, not even the goddess herself." He looked up at her, the Alpha King completely stripped of his pride, offering her the raw, unvarnished truth of his heart. "I'm so sorry, Lisa. I was weak. I let the bond confuse me. But I should have trusted you. I should have come to you. If you want me to leave, if you want to rule alone, I will walk away. I will be your enforcer, your shadow, whatever you will allow." Lisa looked at the man she loved. He had betrayed her trust, yes, under the influence of a divine biological coercion. But when it mattered most, when his life was on the line, he had broken the unassailable laws of their biology to choose her. He had chosen free will. He had chosen her. "You aren't going anywhere," Lisa whispered fiercely. leaning down to press a soft, lingering kiss to his chapped lips. The spark between them wasn't the fiery, consuming blaze of a new mate bond. It was something better. It was the deep, inextinguishable warmth of a fire built to last through the winter. We are going to rebuild this kingdom, together, as equals. Maya smiled, quietly stepping backward out of the room, leaving the king and queen to their reunited court. The crown was heavy, but for the first time in their reign, they would be carrying the weight of it evenly. Thank you for reading the final installment of this dramatic Alpha King saga. We hope you enjoyed the thrilling conclusion, where true love triumphed over a forced fate. And Lisa claimed her rightful place not just as a Luna, but as an equal ruler alongside her sister and her mate. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please like, share, and subscribe for more intense, romantic, and twist-filled werewolf fiction. Do you think Maya will stay in the western reaches, or will she explore her newfound powers elsewhere? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and we will see you in the next story.